Hello and welcome to the second episode of IAFA Insider. We're going to talk today about the IFL 1 game between the Drogheda Lightning and the Tullamore Phoenix, and then look at Trinity's surprising win over the UL Vikings 20-0. But first, I want to address some of the comments we got from you guys during the week over the feedback. It's been great. We're working on the sound quality right now, in fact, as we're making the recording, so hopefully this will sound a lot better when you're listening to this week's show. Also, we're hoping to have an intro tune by next week. If you have any complaints with the one we choose, please direct all your comments to Mars Cosgrave. It's all his fault, not mine. But first, let's talk about the first game of the week. That was with Drogheda Lightning and the Tullamore Phoenix. We're going to talk to Russell Kerley, who's the head coach of the Lightning, about their game there, and also about the IAFL 1 and developments in the league going forward this summer. And joining me now is Russell Kerley. He is the head coach of Drogheda Lightning and the IAFA's communications officer. So we'll be asking about both those roles. And we're going to start off, obviously, with our most recent thing, which is the Drogheda Lightning's first game of the season, away to Tullamore, a 6-0 draw to Phoenix. Russell, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome, Emmet. Good evening.
Well, Russell, 6-0 draw for you guys on the road. It was your first game 11-a-side, isn't that right, with the Lightning, having played DVAs before this?
That's right. Huge step up for us, and it opened our campaign at 11's football.
And as I was just looking at that then, like the change for you guys, because you're used to playing 8-a-side, the change to the full 11, in terms of preparing the team for the change, what did you need to do as a coach?
I think, to be honest with you, Emmet, there's a number of dynamics, and we could be here for an hour on the phone discussing them, but I suppose to all intents and purposes, we wanted to get the guys with a mindset that they'd be ready for a different and a higher level of football. While 8's football is fantastic to allow people to bed themselves in for complete newcomers to the sport, 11's is, in inverted commas, the real deal, and obviously it has the added dimension of special teams football, which is completely new. Whether you spent 1 year, 2 years, or you're brand new to football, that's a brand new dynamic that anybody has to get ready for this year. Well,
let's talk about your special teams first. How did you find the guys cope with bringing that into a real game situation yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly over the last sort of 4 to 5 weeks when we've really been focusing on the special teams dynamic because it's brand new to the club. I've been happy enough with the way that the individuals have been progressing in practice. And then the expectations I had for the special teams game yesterday, the guys fulfilled what I wanted them to fulfill. But obviously, we'll take away the positive and negatives and work for them over the next couple of weeks before our next fixture at the middle of April.
And I suppose, like, defensively, you had a good showing, only conceded a single score. Like, what do you think went right for you guys? Like, what were you trying to do out there, I suppose, in terms of your approach and how you sort of lined up and just what you were trying to do to close down the Phoenix?
You see, I suppose from our club's perspective, we've had exposure to Tullamore 2 years ago. Coach Judge always has a very well drilled, a very strong team, a very organised team. So to all intents and purposes, while we didn't know exactly what we were going to be facing, we knew we were going to be facing a tough team. I've always kind of prided myself, particularly being a defensive player years ago, that I would have a very strong defensive package. And I suppose this year with the 11's format, I've kind of tried to embed a system that prepares for all eventualities.
As I was looking at the offensive performance, you guys, I know you only scored the one touchdown. But what approach did you take? Are you run heavy, pass heavy? How do you approach the game?
We tend to mix it up. As I'm sure you're aware, at this level of football, you kind of have to design your scheme around the resource you have at your disposal. Where if you're playing in the upper tier, if you lose a guy that's 5'10", 180 pounds, and has got 4.6 speed, you just go out into the transfer market and replace like for like. Whereas you have to sit down at the start of the season or as the season's coming up ahead of you and really decide and find out what scheme you're going to run.
And so I was then looking at that, like, what have you guys got in terms of skill positions? I'm a lineman myself, but we talked a lot about the line last week. Would you have a good, solid situation wide receiver, or would you be more running back heavy?
We've always been fortunate to have significant talent in depth at the wide receiver position. And I would say, if I'm putting my hands up to you, Emmet, that's through pure luck more than judgment. Although you try and bed in the fundamental skills right across from 1 to 99 and all the various subgroups on the playing roster, we just seem to be up to this point where we're talking tonight to be blessed with guys that have got good speed and have got a good pair of hands as well.
And so before we move on to your role with the IAFA, just you mentioned there is a bit of a gap now between your opening game of the season and your next one. In terms of preparation, is that a positive or a negative? Because obviously you've got more time to prepare, but it also means your guys are going to be away from game action for a long time.
Well, certainly from our own standpoint, if I'm talking to you now with my head coach's hat on, just on the back of yesterday's game, it was a slugfest. It was won and lost in the trenches. It was very physical. So that's obviously going to allow our guys and obviously Coach Judge's guys to heal without worrying about a fixture coming up in sort of 6 to 7 days time. But obviously you've got to keep the guys focused. So the approach I'm going to take is obviously you give them a couple of days off to allow them to recover. The guys where we normally have a fitness session on a Tuesday night, which would be fairly intensive, cardiovascular, weights program, this, that and the other. We've already put plans in situ tonight to make sure that that's more of a recovery piece and a rehabilitation piece. So there'll be a bit of low-intensity aqua aerobics, jacuzzis, the massage tables be there just to get the guys able and ready to hit the practice field on Sunday. And obviously then once we've had the time to digest the film from Sunday's game, we can then just work on areas that we need to work on that just didn't quite go for us yesterday.
And I suppose, Russell, now putting your Lightning hat to the side for a few minutes and your IFA hat on, we'll start off a bit on with the IFL 1, which of course is the division your guys are playing in. It switched from DV8, which is, for people who aren't aware, was an 8-a-side league with no special teams last year, to a full 11-a-side league. In terms of the growth of the sport, I suppose, how important is that change?
I think it really, we'd reached a crossroads at the end of the last season, just with the culmination with the Shamrock Bowl and the spectacle that was put on there in terms of the crowd numbers and the standard of football. And collectively, the board sat down and said, listen, the sport is evolving at club level. We really need to, from an administrative standpoint and also a competitive standpoint, raise the bar ourselves. So a collective decision was reached that we really did need a two-tier approach for football in Ireland at the moment. And obviously that's where the Shamrock Bowl Championship evolved from and the IFL 1, just to add that bit of spice, whereas before everybody was just really shooting at the Shamrock Bowl. And in terms of mid-season, if they were you'd more or less by midway point, you'd know whether you were in contention or not. But now we have the added dimension of promotion and relegation in the second tier, and it just adds an extra dimension and just keeps people's interest. And obviously from a commercial perspective, it just makes the IFA more brand aware, and obviously looking at commercial ventures with sponsors and so on and so forth. We're just looking to grow the sport across the board.
I suppose, Russell, that's the thing, I suppose, the promotion relegation, because obviously the teams now, they're not coming from an 8-a-side into Shamrock Bowl level play already. They're going to have that foundation, I suppose, in IAFL 1 before promotion. In terms of teams competing, I suppose, after they get promoted, that's probably very important in terms of the experience, so they know the type of play they're going to be up against. Absolutely.
I think the transition, if you look back at last season when we had just DV8s and, if you will, the Shamrock Bowl Championship division, the gulf in terms of standard and intensity was immense. So obviously to try and make sure that we keep the membership happy and the teams happy, we need to have a structured chain of progression to allow people to move up the ladder very quickly. And obviously that's backed up with the announcement this year of the youth kitted football format, where we would have had kids coming through at 10 to 15 in a flag guys touch football. And then you had the potential then of a dropout rate where you'd lose them between the age of 15 to 18 because there was no football for them to progress onto. We can now effectively take kids at the age of 10 and 11, and they really and truly, if they're really serious about and are enjoying the sport, can stay on until they get to their ripe old age of their late 30s, early 40s, like some of us in the league.
Well, my early 30s, and I'm definitely past it myself, but good luck to nothing can last that long.
I give you 10 years, Emmet. I can give you 10 years. It's a milestone for me this year.
That's impressive. And I was looking at the Shamrock Bowl Conference, because we had a couple of interesting results already. UL, of course, were given a good scare by UCD a couple of weeks ago, and then lost to Trinity at the weekend. In terms of the depth in the league, it's pretty important to see teams like that, coming forward, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the league has historically been set out, there's always been the dominant factors. Everybody's more than aware of the history of the Dublin Rebels, and rightly so. A phenomenal franchise that has always just gone from strength to strength. Then we had the emergence of the University of Limerick Vikings, and obviously in more recent, in the last couple of years, the Belfast Trojans. But I think, as Alan said last week on your programme, once you reach the top and you've got multiple targets on your back, and you've always just got to be cognizant of pushing that organisation forward. So there's lots to aspire for, but the Trojans, particularly in the last couple of years, have set down the marker, and everybody from SBC, IFL1, and the youth kitted guys, that's a significant standard that they have set over the last couple of years.
And finally, Russell, because I know there's a lot of events planned around the IFA this summer in terms of possibly teams coming over and also events around the gathering. Would you be able to enlighten listeners a bit about those?
Yeah, well, it's not a veil of secrecy, but we just have an arrangement with some of our partners that the competing teams. I can give you an overview. Obviously, the domestic football final will be the Shamrock Bowl, and for the first time, we're actually going to have the two divisional playoff games in Tallaght Stadium this year. So there'll be 4 teams obviously competing in that. So 2 of them will get a dress rehearsal for using that facility. And that's the first time that's been ever done. So we're delighted to announce that. Obviously, we're hosting the Atlantic Cup this year. So the Belfast Trojans will be representing the domestic interest. And then we'll have teams from Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg as well, which will make up the quartet. And then we've got the international.
Russell. Sorry, Russell, will that be in Belfast, will it? Or?
No, that's at Tallaght Stadium as well.
Oh, excellent. And is there any other events planned at all?
Yeah, there's the International Series, which will be in and around the Labour Day weekend, which is the last weekend in August, the first weekend in September. And we hope to announce the participating teams in and around St Patrick's Day weekend, obviously just to piggyback on the festivities that are there internationally.
Well, Russell, we hope to hear back from you around St Patrick's Day to hear more events on that. But for now, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on the show, Emmet. That
was Russell Kerley, the head coach of the Drogheda Lightning. Now we're going to switch our attention to the game between Trinity and UL at the weekend, which Trinity won 20-0 in a big upset. We're going to chat to Andrew Redmond, starting strong safety with Trinity. Joining me now after their 20-0 win over the UL Vikings is Andrew Redmond, starting strong safety with Trinity American Football Club. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, Emmet?
Andrew, big win for you guys at the weekend. Reasonable enough to say it was an upset. Were you guys confident going in?
Well, yeah. Well, last year when we played Limerick, it was the first game of the season. It was my first game as a rookie for Trinity, and we went down there and we got beaten 55-8, which was pretty bad. So so our head coach at the time drilled it into us, reminded us of the score, and we've kind of had a chip on our shoulder since then. And we always knew if we ever got a chance, we'd like to go back down there and kind of fix what went wrong, you know. So it was great to go down there. We had a lot of confidence, to be honest. We've got a lot of new rookies in there, and we really thought we had a great chance of winning.
And so it's the second year for you playing with Trinity.
Yeah.
In terms of the defense you're running this year to last year, is there anything really different to it?
Well, yeah. Well, we've got a few new rookies in there, and we've just pretty much changed the whole scheme so that we can allow basically as many good players on the field at all times. You know, we want to try and get a good rotation of the players, and there's a lot more substitutions going on, which really helps, you know, going into the third and fourth quarters.
So just take us through the game, I suppose, from the defensive side, where you were first before you get into Trinity scores. What sort of offense were you up against? Were they run heavy, or were you seeing a lot of stuff coming from the middle towards you? What did you have to do yourself?
Yeah, well, initially they came out, and there was a lot of running going on at the beginning. They only came out with 2 wide receivers, so we knew they'd try and run on us because they ran on us quite well, very well last year. So we were really prepared for that, and we did. I don't think we gave up a first down until the second quarter, and we dealt with the run quite well. They started coming out then in the spread offense towards the end of the second half, to the end of the second quarter, sorry. And that was when they did manage to pick up a few yards there, but I think we fixed and adjusted at halftime quite well.
I was going to say, so when they started spreading it more, what did you guys try and do to counter?
Well, yeah, what the thing was, we weren't really expecting them to come out in the spread at all. So first couple of plays, we actually got quite lucky. I think they came out with twins on my side, and I managed it. Basically, I just decided to go man on man because we weren't too sure what to do in that situation, and I got quite lucky. I managed to get an interception on my receiver, which worked out quite well, and we could go into the huddle then and discuss how to play against the quad receivers in the future, you know.
I suppose then on the offense side of the ball, obviously you're on the sideline. What was Trinity doing this year that I suppose was able to get you those scores and go against a good defense, as you said at UL? You're able to put 20 points on the board. Like, what were you guys trying to do?
Well, yeah, last year we had more of a pocket passer, and we had a tight end, Alex Gurney, who's moved into that new QB role, and we've gone with the option now. And I always thought Gurney was one of the best players on our team with the ball in his hands. So now that we can have Alex Gurney basically as an option with obviously Rob McDowell, who's probably one of the best players in the league at the running back position, it's really successful because the defense really don't know what's coming. And then we also have a great passing game with our new tight end Phil Williams and Craig Marin on the outside. So it really we started quite well. I mean, Alex is great at reading the defense as we see in training every week, and pretty much it was very successful, and we started very well. Got off to a really quick start, and that helped.
I suppose in training you'd have noticed a difference, I suppose, in that yourself. Like, are you seeing the receivers having to get used to more blocking assignments?
Exactly. Yeah, the receivers really have stepped up in the blocking game. I specifically noticed it as a safety. I'm not finding it as easy to pursue the tackler as it was last year, So they've done a great job stepping up as well, and then being ready when their number's called to catch passes, etc.
And I suppose then looking ahead to the rest of the season, because obviously you guys, the playoffs is your primary target.
Yeah, exactly.
But being a Dublin team, your big target, of course, is trying to get one over in the Rebels. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're a great team, and we have a lot of respect for them. We'd love to meet them in the playoffs and give them a game, And
I suppose looking ahead down the season, what are your targets step by step? Because obviously it's a big win this week, but it's a long year ahead.
Well, yeah, we know we started after last year. We lost our first 2 games of the season, so we put a lot of emphasis on starting quick this year. But we know it's just one game, and we've got to come. We're playing Cork in 3 weeks. We got to go there and bring our game like we brought to Limerick. So we're not getting ahead of ourselves at all. We'll get back to training and try and fix any mistakes we made, because we did make mistakes. So we definitely, but in terms of ambition, we definitely think we can make a run into the playoffs, and we'd like to see how we fare against the big clubs going forward.
I suppose one final question, Andrew, before you go, is your first game of the season was initially postponed due to pitch issues against UCD.
Yeah.
In terms of preparation for Limerick, how did that affect you guys? Because obviously on the scoreboard it didn't clearly, but in terms of what you had to do to get ready, to adjust to your
doing. Yeah, to adjust to it, we started our practices. We decided I think last week I actually didn't make it to training, but I heard they had quite a physical practice, which we probably wouldn't have planned on doing if we had just come off a game, So we wanted to get physically ready and tough for the game, because we knew Limerick had already played against UCD. They were battle hardened, so we definitely wanted to come into Limerick with ready for the physicality of the game.
And now your coach is a permanent record. You missed training 1 week. Andrew, thanks a lot for joining us in the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks a million, Emmet.
That was Andrew Redmond of Trinity College Dublin. Now we're going to look at the results from the weekend, looking first at the Shamrock Bowl Conference. UL Vikings lost 20-0 at home to Trinity, and Carrickfergus Knights won 2-0 on the road at the West Dublin Rhinos. The fixtures for this weekend see the Craigavon Cowboys at the Carrickfergus Knights in Carrickfergus RFC, University College Dublin travel to the Cork Admirals, that's in Carrigaline RFC, and the Belfast Trojans travel to the Dublin Rebels in Sportslink Dublin, and all those games kick off at 1 p.m. for anyone looking to attend. In IAFL 1, the scores were North Kildare Reapers 12, Waterford Wolves 14, Drogheda Lightning 6, Tullamore Phoenix 6. And there's one game in IAFL 1 this weekend. It sees the Meath Bulldogs travel to the Dublin Dragons. That's in Garda RFC Westlandstown at 1 p.m. For more information, go to AmericanFootball.ie, follow the IAFA on Facebook and Twitter, and of course, for any comments, please direct them to me at Action81. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to have even more improvements to the show for Week 3. Thank you. Goodbye.